A young slave, barely 19, would ignite a scandal no one in the governor's mansion could have imagined. The year was 1850, a sprawling plantation in the South. The governor's mansion stood tall, white pillars gleaming in the sun. Inside, wealth, power, and secrecy ruled every corner. Among the slaves working the fields, one stood out. 19 years old, hands strong, eyes sharp, quiet, obedient, but there was a fire burning inside him, a fire that no chains, no masters could tame. The governor's daughters, 3 of them, beautiful, spoiled, and protected by walls both physical and social. Each walked the halls with the confidence of privilege, yet each carried a curiosity that no strict upbringing could erase. He watched them from afar, a glance here, a shadow there. He learned their routines. He noticed the little things they ignored, a smile lingering too long, a sigh in the garden. It started with small acts, a basket dropped accidentally, a hand brushing against theirs as he passed. Nothing the governor's eyes could catch, or so he thought. Whispers among the other slaves, "Careful, boy, that path leads to trouble." But trouble, to him, was a challenge, a thrill, a way to taste a life forbidden to him. At night, the mansion glowed with candlelight. The daughters sat by the windows, reading, dreaming, longing. He would stand just out of sight, a shadow, silent but present, watching, waiting. Every step was calculated, every glance meant something, every chance encounter a spark. The air was thick with tension, the kind of tension that could snap at any moment. One wrong move, one careless word, and everything would burn. But for now, the game had begun. The young slave was no longer just a servant. He had become a player in a dangerous dance, and the mansion, with all its grandeur and secrets, would never be the same again. The first moment their eyes met, neither of them knew how dangerous curiosity could be. The sun rose over the plantation, birds sang, but inside the mansion, another kind of tension stirred. He moved through the kitchen, carrying a tray of food. His heart pounded, not from labor, but from anticipation. The youngest daughter, Anna, sat by the window. She hummed a tune, unaware of the eyes watching her. Their eyes met, a flicker, a pause. Neither looked away immediately. A connection, a spark that was impossible to ignore. He stumbled over his words as he handed her the tray. She giggled softly, a sound that made his chest tighten. He smiled back, careful to keep it subtle. The middle daughter, Clara, noticed the glance. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Curiosity lit her eyes. A new game had begun. From that moment, small interactions became daring. He would accidentally brush past them in the hallway, offer a gentle word while dusting the shelves. Every action measured, every movement a test. Rumors began to stir among the other slaves. "Don't get too close," they whispered. "But he can't help it," others replied. "Something's different about him." The daughters, too, felt it. A pull they couldn't explain, something dangerous, something thrilling, a desire to see him again. Even the governess noticed the subtle changes, the way Anna lingered near the windows, the way Clara's laugh grew softer and more secretive. The mansion, so orderly and controlled, began to shift under the weight of unspoken tension. He learned their schedules, which room they preferred at which hour, which flowers they liked in their hair, which books they read when no one was looking. Every detail became a weapon, every glance a secret message, every smile a silent promise. The governor remained oblivious. Power blinded him to what was happening under his own roof, and the young slave, he was ready to push the boundaries further, to risk everything for moments of stolen connection. But danger was closing in. One wrong move could destroy not just him, but everyone around him. If you're curious how he navigates this dangerous game with the governor's daughters, don't forget to like, share, comment your thoughts, and subscribe, for next is coming, and it gets even hotter. Behind closed doors, desire and danger began to collide, and no one was safe from the sparks that flew. Night fell over the mansion. Candles flickered in every room, casting shadows on the walls. The young slave moved quietly, unseen, every step deliberate, every breath controlled. The daughters gathered in the parlor, Anna, Clara, and the eldest, Margaret. They whispered, giggled, and shared secrets meant only for them. But tonight, he was there, closer than ever. He delivered a tray of tea. His hand brushed against Anna's accidentally, or so he claimed. Her fingers trembled, a shiver ran down her spine. Clara's eyes followed every movement. Margaret's lips pressed into a tight line, suspicious but intrigued. The mansion felt smaller that night. Walls seemed to shrink. Every glance was magnified, every touch electric. He lingered longer than usual. Small talk, polite smiles, but every word carried weight. Every pause was loaded with meaning. The daughters couldn't stop thinking about him. Even as they went to bed, whispers of his presence lingered, a shadow in their minds, a thrill they couldn't name. Rumors among the servants grew. She's falling for him. No, he's dangerous. Yet no one could deny the tension in the air. It was palpable. He began leaving small tokens, a folded flower on Anna's pillow, a carefully carved charm for Clara, subtle gestures, invisible to the governor, but clear to those who mattered. Every secret meeting was a risk. If discovered, punishment would be severe. Yet the allure of connection, of forbidden desire, was irresistible. The governor, proud and unaware, went about his duties. His daughters' hearts, however, were no longer entirely his to control. And the young slave? He felt power in a place he was never meant to possess. Every night the mansion grew more dangerous. Every secret glance, every subtle touch, pushed them all closer to disaster. What began as glances now demanded risk. Morning arrived quietly, too quietly. Sunlight washed over the governor's mansion, white pillars, perfect symmetry, a house built to hide secrets. The young slave rose before dawn, hands already sore, mind already racing. He knew the rules: eyes down, back straight, silence. But rules were losing their grip. Anna stood on the balcony, hair loose, morning air brushing her face. She watched him cross the yard. He felt her gaze, did not look up, not yet. Clara waited near the stairwell, pretending to read, reading nothing, listening for his footsteps. Margaret observed from afar, always watching, always calculating. She saw everything and said nothing. Inside the mansion, servants whispered, low voices, sharp warnings. This is dangerous. He's playing fire. The governor will notice. But danger had already taken root. He carried linens past Anna's room. She dropped her handkerchief. Deliberately. He paused, picked it up. Their fingers touched. A breath held too long. A silence too heavy. She whispered, "Thank you." He nodded, walked away, heart pounding. In the hallway, Clara waited. She stepped into his path, too close. "You're needed in the garden," she said. A lie, a perfect lie. He hesitated, then nodded. The garden was quiet, hedges tall, paths hidden. They met beneath the fig tree. No touching, not yet, just words, soft, dangerous. "You shouldn't be here," Anna said, yet she didn't leave. Clara smiled, nervous, excited. Margaret stood at the edge of the garden, watching, listening, her jaw tightened. She felt something unfamiliar, not fear, not shame, jealousy. Inside the mansion, the governor reviewed papers, trade, politics, power. He sensed nothing, not yet. Back in the garden, footsteps echoed. A servant passed nearby. The group froze. Breath stopped. Silence stretched. The servant moved on. Laughter followed. Quiet, relieved. The young slave knew the truth now. This was no longer accidental. This was chosen. Each meeting sharpened the blade. Each glance cut deeper. That afternoon, Margaret confronted him, alone, in the corridor. "You think this ends well?" she asked. He met her eyes, calm, unflinching. "I think it already began," he replied. She said nothing, but her expression changed. Not anger, something closer to fear. At dinner, tension sat at the table, unseen, heavy. Anna barely ate. Clara avoided the governor's eyes. Margaret watched her sisters closely. The governor noticed. "Are you unwell?" he asked. They answered too quickly, too softly. Later that night, candlelight flickered. The mansion breathed. The young slave passed through the hallway again. Anna's door cracked open, just enough. A signal. He stopped, waited, then moved on. Not tonight. Restraint was power. Outside, clouds gathered, a storm threatening the horizon. Inside, something more dangerous brewed. Margaret stood at her window watching him disappear into the darkness. She realized then, this was no passing game, no childish rebellion. This was a fracture. In the house, in the family, in control itself. And fractures only grow. The mansion slept, but its secrets did not. Tomorrow would demand more courage, more lies, more risk, and none of them were ready. If you feel the tension rising, share this story, comment your thoughts, and subscribe, because next is where restraint breaks and consequences begin. A secret too dangerous to keep was about to explode in the governor's mansion. The nights grew bolder. The young slave moved like a shadow, every step calculated, every glance deliberate. Anna waited behind the rose bushes. Clara lingered near the fountain. Margaret pretended to sew, but her eyes followed him. Whispers filled the corridors. Servants exchanged nervous glances. "Do you see what he's doing?" "Careful, one mistake and it's over." But caution was a luxury none of them wanted. Desire had taken hold. A spark turned into a flame, and the flame was dangerous. He leaned close to Anna in the garden. Her breath caught. A fleeting touch, just enough to send shivers down her spine. Clara laughed softly, hiding behind the fountain. She was thrilled, terrified, and utterly captivated. Margaret grew restless. Her jealousy burned quietly, hidden beneath composed smiles. She watched them, torn between anger and fascination. The mansion itself seemed to hold its breath. Every creaking floorboard, every rustling curtain, a reminder of how fragile their secret was. Rumors reached the governor. Small details, little oddities, a flower out of place, a giggle in the hallway that didn't belong. He dismissed them at first. Pride and arrogance blinded him. But the young slave was clever. Every move carefully hidden, every encounter a calculated risk. The daughters, too, were taking risks. Secret meetings in the orchard, lingering glances across candlelit rooms, whispers that made their hearts race. A game of fire they couldn't resist. But fire burns, and sparks can ignite disaster. One careless laugh, one glance caught too long, one servant too observant, and everything could collapse. Yet they pressed on, The thrill too intoxicating, the danger too exciting. Every stolen moment a victory, every heartbeat a warning. The mansion waited, the governor waited, and the young slave, he was ready to push further than anyone dared imagine. If you're on edge wondering what happens when secrets collide with jealousy and suspicion, hit like, share, comment your thoughts, and subscribe. Next, we'll take the danger to the breaking point. Jealousy, suspicion, and a single careless moment would change everything in the governor's mansion. The mansion was restless. Shadows seemed longer. Whispers hung in the halls. The governor's daughters could no longer hide their fascination. Anna lingered near the orchard, waiting for him. Clara's heart raced each time he appeared. Margaret's jealousy simmered beneath a mask of composure. Servants noticed the tension. One spoke too loudly. Another dropped a tray. Rumors began to stir quietly, then louder, threading through the halls like wildfire. The young slave felt it too, eyes watching him more closely, questions asked just a little too sharply. The danger was growing, but so was the thrill. He found Anna near the fountain at dusk, a gentle touch, a whisper in her ear. The world around them vanished. Clara watched from the shadows, her heartbeat loud in her chest. Margaret followed silently, her patience cracking. A servant almost caught him leaving the garden. Heart pounding, he froze. Eyes met briefly. A warning glance. No one spoke. But the governor was not blind forever. He noticed Anna's distracted behavior. Clara's laughter seemed nervous. Margaret's cold stare followed her sisters everywhere. He began asking questions, small ones at first. Where were you? Who were you with? The daughters fumbled. The young slave's heart raced. Each day was a dangerous balancing act, and yet desire was stronger than fear. Secret letters slipped under doors, a hidden smile exchanged across candlelight, a stolen moment in a quiet hallway. But cracks were forming. Margaret's jealousy grew into resentment. Clara's curiosity turned into worry. Anna's excitement teetered on the edge of panic. Every risk had consequences. Every secret had a price, and the mansion's walls were starting to close in. The young slave knew the time of careful steps was ending. Soon the game would demand a choice. One false move, one careless glance, and everything could unravel. A single glance, a whispered secret, and the mansion would never be the same again. The air was heavy, tension thick as smoke. Every corner of the governor's mansion seemed alive with suspicion. The young slave moved silently through the hallways, every step measured, every glance calculated. Anna waited in the garden, heart racing. Clara followed from behind the fountain, breath shallow. Margaret lingered near the window, her eyes sharp with suspicion and anger. A servant nearly caught him again. His hand trembled. A tray nearly crashed to the floor. The moment passed, but the danger was real. The governor noticed changes in his daughters. Anna's giggles, once innocent, now lingered in strange ways. Clara's smiles were secretive, knowing. Margaret's icy demeanor spoke louder than words. Confrontation was inevitable. That evening, the governor summoned them to the parlor, his voice cold, questions sharp. Where have you been? What are you doing in the garden so late? The daughters faltered. Anna's cheeks flushed. Clara's hands trembled. Margaret's eyes darted, suspicious and accusing. He watched them carefully. The young slave remained hidden in the shadows, every heartbeat loud in his chest. Whispers turned into accusations. Something is happening. Someone is hiding a secret. The mansion's silence shattered. The young slave realized the walls were closing in. Every secret, every glance, every touch risked exposure. And yet the thrill of defiance surged through him. Anna's voice quivered as she spoke. Clara tried to explain, her eyes pleading. Margaret's anger flared. The governor's patience thinned. A decision had to be made. Secrets were no longer safe, and one wrong step could destroy everything. Outside, the night deepened. The garden, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap. Every shadow could betray them. Every whisper could be heard. The young slave knew the game was no longer about attraction. It was about survival. Every move mattered. Every glance was a risk. If you want to see how secrets explode and danger hits its peak in the governor's mansion, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Next is coming, and it will reveal shocking twists you won't believe. The secret was exposed, and the mansion trembled under the weight of scandal. The night was quiet, too quiet. Candles flickered, shadows dancing across the walls. Every corner of the mansion seemed to watch. The young slave moved carefully, heart pounding. Every sound felt like a warning, every step a risk. Anna and Clara waited in the hidden orchard, their faces pale, breaths shallow. Margaret's anger had grown into a storm. She followed them quietly, eyes burning with betrayal. The governor had heard whispers, small hints, rumors from servants. He was no longer blind. Questions came faster now. Who is visiting the daughters? Why are they hiding in the garden? A careless laugh, a misplaced gesture, and it all came crashing down. The young slave was discovered, hands trembling, eyes wide. The governor's fury ignited like wildfire. Anna screamed, Clara cried, Margaret stood rigid, furious. The mansion erupted in chaos. Servants whispered in fear, doors slammed, candlelight flickered violently. He tried to speak, to explain, to calm the storm, but the governor's anger was unstoppable. Punishment loomed. The daughter's innocence and pride hung by a thread. Yet even in the storm, he did not cower. His eyes met Anna's, a silent promise. Clara's gaze held admiration. Margaret's anger burned hotter, but she could not look away. The consequences were severe. The governor demanded answers. Secrets would be exposed. Trust shattered. The young slave's future was uncertain. Every glance, every whisper, every stolen moment had led here. And now nothing would ever be the same. The mansion, once a symbol of control, now quivered under scandal. Desire, curiosity, and defiance had collided, and the fallout was only beginning. When secrets collide with power, the consequences are brutal, and no one is safe. The mansion was tense. Silence weighed heavily on the walls. Every creak of wood, every whisper felt amplified. The governor paced, face red with fury. "How could this happen under my roof?" he demanded. The daughters stood frozen, guilt and fear written across their faces. The young slave was summoned, heart pounding, hands clenched, every step a gamble. He met the governor's eyes, no fear, only determination. The room crackled with tension. Every word, every glance could seal his fate. Anna stepped forward, her voice shaky but defiant. I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. Clara nodded, tears in her eyes. Margaret remained silent, her anger unbroken. The governor's wrath boiled over. Punishment was demanded. Trust shattered. The mansion, once orderly, now felt like a battlefield. Yet in the chaos, alliances formed. The young slave's cleverness had earned him respect. He spoke carefully, each word measured. He reminded them all of his loyalty, his service, but also his courage. Anna and Clara supported him, quietly pleading. Margaret's resistance was fierce, but even she hesitated. The tension was unbearable. Decisions had to be made. Lives hung in balance. Punishments were dealt, secrets revealed. But even in the fallout, something had changed. The governor realized control was no longer absolute. The daughters, once naive, now understood desire, power, and risk. The young slave had survived the storm, but the danger was far from over. The mansion was never the same. Walls that once hid secrets now seemed to whisper them. Desire, jealousy, and cunning had rewritten the rules, and one thing was certain: every choice they made now would shape the future forever. The scandal reached its peak, and the mansion would never recover from the consequences. Morning light cut through the mansion's grand windows. The air was heavy, thick with tension. Every glance, every whisper carried the weight of the previous night's chaos. The governor stood in the parlor, face pale with exhaustion and fury. His daughters flanked him, guilt and fear written across their faces. Anna's eyes searched for the young slave. Clara's hands trembled. Margaret's anger had softened, just enough to mask her fear. The young slave entered, calm, composed. Every eye turned to him. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The governor spoke first. "Explain yourself, all of it, every detail." He waited, silent, eyes piercing. The young slave's voice was steady. He told the truth carefully. Every encounter, every stolen moment, every whispered glance. He admitted his daring, but also his loyalty, his respect for the family, and his humanity. The daughters spoke too. Anna and Clara confessed, tears falling. Margaret finally admitted her jealousy and fear. The room was tense, raw with emotion. The governor's anger was fierce, but tempered by surprise. The courage of the young slave had earned him something unexpected: respect. Punishment was given, but not as severe as feared. The daughters learned lessons in desire, power, and trust. The mansion's walls no longer hid secrets. They held stories of defiance, daring, and human complexity. The young slave remained, but now with a new place in the household. Not merely a servant, but someone who had changed the rules of a rigid, oppressive world. The daughters, once naive, were now wiser, stronger, and more aware of their own desires and limits. The governor, forever aware that power is fragile and that courage can appear where least expected. And outside, the world went on. But inside the mansion, nothing would ever be the same. A story of desire, danger, and daring had unfolded, and its echoes would last for generations. If you were captivated by this story, make sure to like, share, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more thrilling historical tales. You won't want to miss what's coming next.